The sun hung low in the sky, casting an orange hue over the land of Egypt. A soft wind whispered through the desert, carrying with it the scent of distant memories. In the stillness, there was a question that hung in the air, a question no one dared to voice: what would become of Joseph, the once enslaved boy who had risen to power in Egypt? It was a mystery that only time could answer, but as we enter the final chapter of Joseph's journey, we begin to unravel the truth hidden in the depths of his heart. Joseph's father, Jacob, had passed away. His body, a symbol of a father's love and guidance, now lay still in Egypt. The mourning was unlike any other, deep, solemn, and filled with emotion. The Egyptians mourned for Jacob 70 days. But beyond the mourning, there was something heavier, a weight on Joseph's heart. Joseph fell on his father's face, and wept over him, and kissed him. Genesis 50 verse 1. This was more than just sorrow. It was a release, a final act of love to the man who had once carried him, the man who had shown him that, even in the darkest times, God's hand was at work. The time for mourning had passed, and now it was time for a journey that would carry Joseph and his family back to the land of Canaan, the land that God had promised to their ancestors. But this wasn't just any journey. It was a final act of obedience, an honoring of his father's last request. Before Jacob's death, he had asked that his body be taken to Canaan to be buried with his forefathers in the cave of Machpelah. And Joseph, a man of honor, did not hesitate. "I will do as you have said," Joseph promised. Genesis 50 verse 5. The journey was long, filled with sadness and remembrance. But Joseph's family, along with Egyptian dignitaries, accompanied the procession. The journey was not just a physical one, it was a spiritual passage, a reaffirmation of the covenant God had made with Jacob's family. Once the burial was complete, the brothers of Joseph feared the consequences of their past actions. They had once sold Joseph into slavery, and now, with their father gone, they feared Joseph might finally take revenge. They sent a message to Joseph, pleading for his forgiveness. "Say to Joseph, please forgive the transgression of your brothers and their sin, because they did evil to you." Genesis 50 verse 17. It was a moment of truth, and Joseph's response would define the future of their relationship. His brothers stood trembling before him, waiting for the inevitable wrath that they feared for so long. But Joseph's heart was not filled with anger. Instead, it was filled with something greater, grace. Joseph's voice, though gentle, carried with it a power that no one could deny. "Do not fear, for am I in the place of God?" Joseph asked, his tone both humble and firm. Genesis 50 verse 19. He acknowledged the wrong that had been done to him, but he did not allow bitterness to consume him. Instead, Joseph saw the hand of God at work in his life, using his suffering for a greater purpose. "You meant evil against me, but God meant it for good, to bring about that many people should be kept alive, as they are today." Genesis 50 verse 20. Joseph's words brought healing, not just to his brothers, but to the entire family. He reassured them, promising to take care of them, even providing for their families. "So do not fear, I will provide for you and your little ones." Genesis 50 verse 21. Joseph lived for another 110 years, witnessing the continued growth of his family in Egypt. Before his death, he spoke one last time to his brothers, reminding them of God's promise to their ancestors. "I am about to die, but God will visit you and bring you up out of this land to the land that he swore to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob." Genesis 50 verse 24. Joseph's words carried the weight of divine assurance. Though he was about to die, his faith in God's promises never wavered. Joseph was embalmed and placed in a coffin in Egypt, but his final request was clear. He wanted to be carried back to Canaan when God fulfilled his promise. Joseph's death was not the end, it was simply another chapter in God's unfolding story. As the story of Joseph comes to an end, we see not just the fulfillment of God's promises, but also the profound power of forgiveness. Joseph's life, filled with hardship, betrayal, and ultimate triumph, teaches us that no matter the circumstances, God can use our pain for a greater purpose. Through forgiveness, Joseph not only healed his broken family but also secured the future of his people. His final words remind us that God's promises never fail, and even in the face of death, his plan continues.